What we're going to do now is the next drill, we call it pick up and lay down drill. And this is a crucial drill that also you can adjust it to your ability level. If you're really a good caster, you can pick up 60 feet of line, and it's going to be a great drill to teach how to control a line and how to make a tight loop and have a good chance at a really good first forward cast. The idea of the pick up and lay down is that when you've got your line out there, you need to pick it up. And oftentimes, you're going to pick it up from quite a distance. When you do, it's best to have your rod tip down. So we're going to talk about the rod tip down and the line straight. You don't really have to with short amount of line, you don't have to have the rod tip down, but get in the habit of it down, because if you have a huge amount of line, what happens is you need a substantial casting arc to make a decent loop. If I've got 65 feet of line out there and I try to pick it up starting here, and I have a 140-degree casting arc, let's say, it's going to hit the ground behind me or the water. So if you're fishing for redfish and you lift your rod first and then you start your acceleration, you're going to have a problem. The idea here is to keep your rod tip down with a straight line and accelerate from the very beginning. When do you actually stop your rod? That's a good question, and the answer is when you get to the nail knot. When you see where the nail knot, the line ends and the leader begins, at that point, now if you've got a heavy fly, you may have to wait a little bit longer, but what you want to do is you want to wait, just watch. When the nail knot comes off the ground, that's when you want to stop. So when the nail knot comes off the ground, you want to stop at that point. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick it up, and then we'll slow it down for you so you can see how the nail knot, the angle of the line coming off the ground, is at about right angle to the rod. So when the rod stops right here, the angle of the line is this, and we're going to have a nice clean pickup. So here we go. So that gives you a pretty good a good loop in the back, which is going to be able to get in. We've got about an 8-mile-an-hour wind right now behind us. So that's still doing a pretty good job of straightening out, and I'm not really forcing it. Now what you're going to do, the second part of the drill, is once you've picked it up, and when you start down here, it's just smooth all the way to just watch the nail knot. As soon as it comes off the ground, stop. Pretty simple. Now what we're going to do is let's take a look at this. What we want to do here is we want to pause. So we're going to need to pause when we get done with this. We're going to do this, pause, and you're going to notice also if you watch my rod, it drifts back. So the easiest way to do this is simply, what you want to do is you want to pull the line off the water very gradually so it doesn't stick or scare fish. So if I just pick it up here and then jerk it off the water, it's going to cause a lot of problems. It would scare fish, it might stick in the water. So instead what we want to do is just nice and smoothly bring it up. If we bring it back to about 2 o'clock, we're going to get a pretty wide loop, but that's fine unless you learn how to drift. So what I would suggest is try to learn how to drift, because it's a good technique in other applications also. So here's the drift. You're going to stop a little sooner, which is going to give you a slightly narrower loop. The problem is that if you started your forward cast from here and you wanted to make a fairly level cast, you're going to get a tailing loop. So the only way you can prevent from doing that is to drift. And then you can make your false cast. If you want to just go back to 2, you don't have to drift. But you're going to get a little wider loop. still can make a nice forward loop off of that. But you might want to practice drifting, and all drifting is, you stop your rod and then follow it back. Just stop your rod and follow it back. So if you watch this, so the next step after the drift or the stop, whichever technique you decide to use, is you have to pause. You have to wait long enough for the line to straighten out. If I were to go back this soon, I've got too much slack. If I wait too long, then I have a bad cast. It's got to be just right. So what you want to do is you want to go back. Just as the line gets to the end and straightens out, that's when you're going to make your forward cast. So if you're going to use a lot of line, you're going to have a longer pause. If a shorter line, a shorter pause. A longer line, you're going to use a little bigger casting arc. A shorter line, a little bit smaller casting arc. But a good drill, and you can practice it with a lot of line out, a small amount of line, whatever. And also make sure that if you have a very short amount of line, your trajectory is different. Remember, you've got a smaller casting arc. So if I'm going to pick up and lay down from here, it's going to be here. If I'm going to pick up and lay down with 60 feet of line out, so there's about 55 or 60 feet. Now, if I'm going to pick that much up, you're going to see I have a much bigger casting arc. So you can play with this and do whatever you want to. This last thing you want to do is you want to stop. Play like I like to play, like I tell people, play like your rod tip is pounding a nail into those trees up there. So when I get to this point right here, I'm going to pound a nail with my rod tip right there. I don't want to bend the nail by doing this. That's bending the nail. I don't want to bend the nail. My rod tip is the hammer. My rod tip is boom, right there. You can see where my rod tip pounds a nail in the direction of that bottom loop. Right there. If I go down, it causes that. So what I want to do is don't bend the nail. Pound the nail here. Pound the nail. You get a nice level loop and you won't have that big dip in the bottom of your line. Then follow it down. So one, rod tip down, straight line, nice, relaxed, smooth acceleration till about when your leader comes off the water. Stop, pause, forward, pound a nail, and then drop it down. There we go. That's the pick up and lay down. You can do it with different links. Remember your trajectory, the force, the pause, and the casting arc will all have to change as your distance changes. Very important drill.